in China, people is the core. People is the core of leadership. For leaders, it's most important that they can win the support of their people so that they can drive what they want to achieve for the group of people, not just for individual.
Hi, this is Anna Kostecka. Welcome to What Works Across Cultures, my podcast on the art and science of global leadership and teamwork. I've explored this topic for over 15 years. Now I'm bringing experts from all around the world to talk about how culture shapes the way we lead, communicate, and collaborate. And of course, what works across cultures. Join our conversation. Welcome. In this episode, we'll talk about leadership and how culture impacts it. As always, I am starting with a disclaimer. We will discuss cultural differences, so the patterns in how people tend to behave and make sense of the behavior of others. And just to be clear, this does not mean that everyone will act in the same way. People are complex, and culture is only one of many things that shape how we think and behave. Today, I invited Benita Bi, an experienced L&D strategist and consultant with over 25 years of experience in talent and leadership development across China, the US, and Europe. The companies she served, focusing on leadership and talent development, include Amazon, Lenovo, Versuni, and OLX, among others. Benita, I'm super happy to have you here with me to discuss leadership. Is there anything you would like to add to the introduction?
Thank you, Anna. I'm happy to be here. As you introduced, that I was born and grown up in China and work across US and Europe. So it's my great pleasure to be here to share some of my personal learning as well as my experiences when I develop leaders across the world.
I want to start with asking you about a proverb, Chinese proverb about leadership that if you could share with us.
Yeah, to address your question, two proverbs come to my mind. One is talking about 得人心者得天下, means he who wins the hearts of the people wins the world. And the other one is 水能载舟,亦能覆舟, means people can either support a leader or bring a leader down. So what does that mean to you when you heard the two proverbs from China? What's a clue you may get?
So for me, it's very interesting because I can see the group orientation, the collectivism. But what surprised me also is that typically when I think about culturally appropriate leadership style from China, I'm thinking more of this status or hierarchy that you will have. Mm-hmm. And here in those proverbs, you actually have those parts around, okay, that people can bring leader down and leader actually has to win the support of people. So can you tell me a little bit more about that? That really got me curious.
So thinking about Chinese leadership, the kind of like a perception of other culture may be that, it's high hierarchy, leader in a high position. They gave the top-down instructions. However, in China, people is the core. People is the core of leadership. For leaders, it's most important that they can win the support of their people so that they can drive what they want to achieve for the group of people, not just for individual. So it's a kind of like a equality of you take the responsibility of the leader in your position, but at the same time, people have the expectation that you demonstrate your leadership by providing clear direction, clear instruction, as well as the protection when things not going well. So that is the core. Is not only you give the instruction, but also you provide the support to people. You care about the people. So in some sense, being a leader in China, they take them as kind of like a parent. Mm-hmm. They protect their case. They don't want their case to fail. So along the way, driving towards something, they may give you a lot of support. So in China, people accept this kind of relationship, But this kind of leadership style in Western country, which is more egalitarian, people may think it differently, that you are micromanager because you are always look after me, that you don't give me the flexible or freedom. But so knowing that, you see, people are core. As a leader, you are not just a person to make decision, but you also take full responsibility for your people, for the result.
People are core. I want to start with the definition of leadership because the ones that I am using are actually very aligned with what you said around that people are the core. For example, I often use this definition from the Center for Creative Leadership, and it says that leadership is a social process where individuals work together to produce results that they could never achieve alone. And I like also definitions from Frances Ray. She's a faculty member at Harvard Business School. And she says that leadership is about making others better as a result of your presence and making sure that that impact lasts in your absence. So interestingly, those definitions are not about leader themselves, but actually about all of the people around them. What do you think about this definition, and does it speak to you?
I like both. With my experience living and working in China as well as in the other countries, I like both of these definitions because the first one focuses on the result and also participative leadership to drive the result. The second one focuses on people, empowering and growing people. So I like both. Well, at the same time, if you compare with Chinese philosophy, it's clearly Western philosophy. So for me, I would put the both together, that I would think leadership is about empowering and influencing people, working towards a shared goal or a shared purpose by creating an environment that people trust, respect, and support each other. They can grow together. So that is my definition, that they have a shared goal and then they work together with the trust, the respect, and also they learn and grow together. That is my definition.
I really like what you shared, and it makes me think about the research that is ongoing. It has started in 1990. It's a huge cross-cultural study of leadership, global leadership and organizational behavior effectiveness, GLOBE project. It studied 62 countries around the world, and the researchers found that there are certain leadership qualities that are universal. One of them is this value-based leadership. It's about a vision. It's about high-performance standards, so very aligned with what you said. Other universal characteristic is team-oriented leadership. So that works universally across cultures, but different characteristics, for example, participatory leadership. It's not universal. It works in certain cultures, but not in others. I want to ask you about when you work with teams, what are some signs that leadership happens in a team?
As I mentioned just now, that the leaders create an environment that mutual trust, respect, support, learning there. If you look at a team, whether there is a leadership or not, if you look at whether there is healthy debate in the team, whether people, they dare to be different, they have unique opinion, and they are open to feedback, both giving and receiving feedback, and then learn from failures. They don't take a mistake or failure as a bad thing, but they learn from it. And also they have the shared responsibilities. They support each other, hold each other accountable. So those are the signs that this is a good leader there, that they create environment that people can behave with a sense of safety here. Well, on the contrast, if a team, you see that they blame others when things go wrong, or they hide failures, and the only one-way communication, that only the leader or only one person in the team talks while the others just follow, and also there's punishment for mistakes, all those signs will tell you that something wrong. Mainly, the leader didn't create the right culture or right environment for the team.
Mm-hmm. And it's a leader's responsibility to create this kind of environment for the team.
I would say leader is critical here. Everybody has the responsibility, but leader set the tone.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. One of your areas of expertise is executive or leadership development. How do you approach helping leaders develop their competencies, and which are the most important ones?
That's a very good question. With more than 25 years of working both in consulting firms and also in-house, I always started from what the business need there, because talent development cannot be done with isolation from the business need. So I start from the business need, understand the strategic priorities, and also what are the leadership behaviors are needed based on the business priorities to achieve the business goal. So from there, then the concrete competency can be generated and then develop the leaders using the blended approach. Because people are learning not just through one way. They may learn from book, they may learn from others, they may learn by doing.
Business need translates into need for specific competencies or behaviors, so context matter. And can you give us some examples of maybe what types of behaviors were important in specific contexts that you worked in?
So one example was when I worked at Amazon. So for the leaders at that time, Amazon was facing fast paced growing. And the requirement, the business need for the leaders is that they need to make fast decision even without the knowledge or domain of a certain area. For example, a leader, business leader, they may not have the technology background, but in order to make fast decision, they need to lead the technology team and make the decision that combine the business, the operations, and the technology. So that is a requirement for the leader. You need to lead across multifunctional team, not just your own domain. With that requirement, leader need to build the capability that they can set the direction even though they don't know more about the technology part. Then how to lead a person, how lead an expert that you don't have the domain knowledge. It takes a leader to be more open, to be more curious, to be more humble, and to know how to ask questions, how to involve people in the process of making faster decision. So those are some of the skills we need the leaders to build. Then we put the leader into the kind of like a scenario-based challenge that they make the decision with the scenarios.
That was a great example. I'm sure it will resonate with a lot of leaders.
Yeah, because they make decisions for the simulated cases. And then in the case, they see, what's my decision impact? How my decision impact the business? How my decision impact the team? So in the simulation environment, they have all the data. They see the impact they made. And then they can reflect and then correct their behavior. Say, next round, I will do something differently. Then I will see the different impact.
Mm-hmm. You worked in China, the Netherlands, and the US. Those cultures, those countries have very different approach to leadership. What are the differences that you have noticed?
I would say that it's not fair to say, one description for one country because people are very unique. However, based on the different value system of the culture, some generalization, we can generate some common behaviors in those culture, but it doesn't stand for that every single leader in that country, they behave in this way. If I summarize, I would say at very high level that in the US, because it's a value individualism and focus on personal achievement, leaders tend to inspire with a vision and drives results. So result driven and inspiring leader, that is more common you can see in the US. While in Netherlands is extremely low power distance and they value collaboration. So leaders tend to facilitate. Normally they facilitate during the meeting and to get the input from different stakeholders, different team members in order to build consensus before they achieve agreement. So that is more like you mentioned, participative leadership. You will see very commonly in the Netherlands. While in China, it's more high hierarchy and value the harmony and the consensus. So leader guides and protects team to achieve the success for the team. If I summarize in 3 words, US is more like a visionary leader and drive result, while Netherlands is more facilitator, like a facilitator to build the alignment, while China is more like decisive leader. They guide and then they protect their team.
Mm-hmm. You beautifully described 2 dimensions that we use to compare cultures in cross-cultural field. One of them is how power is distributed. You mentioned, for example, that Netherlands, right, has a low power distance. You would have countries that are on one side egalitarian. There's not a big power distance between people, and countries that are more hierarchical. Sometimes the word status is used. I like to think also about it as a structure, that there is a certain structure in how groups are organized. And then there is this other dimension. It's how you make decisions. Either is consensus or a top-down. So, for example, Netherlands is a culture in which typically you make decisions by consensus, whether China and US are more on the side of top-down. So it's typically the leader who has this responsibility for making decisions. I want to make it very clear that doesn't mean that every leader from China, every leader from US, or every leader from Poland or Netherlands will act in one way, but it's more about the patterns and what do we grow up to see as a good leadership. So I want to ask you about this logic behind the leadership idea in China. And you already started to share a little bit when you explained the proverbs. But why is it that you have a high hierarchy, and why do you value harmony and consensus? Why this is a good leadership?
That one, I would think it comes from the history of how a country evolves. So China is an agriculture-based country. So it takes people to collaborate, to work together. And, being a farmer is depends on the weather, right? And then there's hardship. So you have to support each other. You have to unite together. For example, Netherlands is based on the trading. So they work with people from all over the world since they were, started the country. So they are more kind of like reaching out to the world, and they trade with people with the equality so that they can make the trading, right? So for China, they have the leader to lead the people and to handle the hardship. Also in China, the philosophy mainly comes from Confucius, that it talks about the leader or the empire. What is the behavior or what is the empire should behave, and what is the general people you should behave, or your subordinates you should behave. So the value is that you as subordinates, you need to be submissive to your leader. That is by default. You have to do that. This is the value of the society. Not only that, they also have the relationship between the older brother and younger brother. The same. The younger brother should respect your older brother, and the older brother is superior than younger one. And traditionally, as a couple, that the husband has the power over the wife. So we call it those basic relationship in the society. So that is the value of the society. And then the companies was the later formed units. and then it could not live with outside of the society. So it follows. And then the leader, like the umpire, they need to make sure everybody, the people live in the happy life. They have food to eat. They have shelter to stay. So the same for the company leader. They need to make the decision. They need to ensure the result that the people can benefit from it. The people will not suffer from it. They take themselves as the responsibilities. At the same time, people also expected the leaders to do that. Then as a reward, you are respecting them, you listen to them, you execute what decision they make. So that is this kind of relationship is mutually accepted in the society.
Mm-hmm. So there is a power, but it comes with responsibility. That's
Yes.
kind of the logic behind it. And based on your experience and expertise, what do you think people tend to get wrong when leading a team with colleagues from China or working for a Chinese manager?
I would share 2 examples here to make it more resonate to people. The first one was I interviewed Dutch leader who has been working in China for more than 20 years. I asked him, what's your biggest challenge when you worked in China leading the Chinese team? He said that my biggest challenge was that I didn't know what went wrong. Why is that? Because people never told me something went wrong until maybe someday it became too big. It could not be hidden. Then I know, but it was too late. So how he perceived this at the beginning, he didn't understand the culture. He felt people were not transparent. They didn't disclose the problem at the early stage. However, over time, he understood it's also because of the power distance. Employees, they feel, okay, you as a leader, you set direction, you make a decision. It's my responsibility now to make it happen. If something wrong, I should take the responsibility to fix it rather than bring the problem to you because you already done your part. Now is my part. So in order to show the respect to leader and to take the responsibility, they try to fix it by themselves. So that is one aspect that they didn't disclose early on. A second one is in China, face is very important, saving face. If they bring their own problem to the leader, one, they feel they bring trouble to leader. Secondly, they feel I'm not capable enough. I should demonstrate my capability by fixing the problem. So that is the second one. I would add another layer. The third layer is more about people overvalue actions versus words. So they want to show by actions rather than by words. So then the result is that Western leader may feel you don't have enough communication or even necessary communication, you don't have it. But for Chinese people, they thought that my action will show, not my words. So they continue to work. But this is the common problem that people may not communicate early on for any issues. That is not about honesty or transparency. It's more about what they were trying to achieve.
What is your responsibility? I love this example because it shows what is the completely different logic and how easy actually it is to go to the judgment. Because a lot of leaders that I work with as well, when they work with different cultures that are more hierarchical, they would bring that up, that why people didn't tell me that before. And usually the interpretation is they are not honest, they're hiding something. But what you're explaining is more, this is my responsibility to fix it. So I will fix it. I'll try to fix it. And I'll do my best, right? So that's why I'm not telling you. I want to show you as opposed to tell you. Then for a leader in this kind of environment, what helps to understand what is happening in the team and what would help a leader in a situation that you described?
That is a very good question. So in Western countries like US or Netherlands, people speak up during the meeting, especially public meeting. They don't hesitate to speak up. Well, for Chinese people with a concern or with a culture background I mentioned just now, don't expect people to speak up, especially for bad news in the public meeting. Then set the one-on-one meeting and also set expectations clearly to your employees so that give them sense of safety that they can speak up transparently or openly. Then it's helpful. So just, set the private time to talk, to build a personal connection. They feel safe to open up, and they also feel they have the permission to share. That will help. On the other hand, leaders should also keep in mind, even if people didn't say no, it doesn't mean yes.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times if there's silence or there's no objections, leaders may think, okay, people agree. Otherwise they would say, right? But in China, especially in public meeting, if people have different opinion, to save the face for the leader, they would not say no or objection in the meeting. Then better to double check after the meeting that what's your opinion? What's your concern? So give them some room to talk. Don't assume the no is yes.
Mm-hmm. And also even with the questions that you mentioned, you said, what is your opinion? What is your concern? So it's an open-ended question. It's not like, do you agree with me? How do you agree
Exactly. Yeah. And one interesting thing is there is some unconscious behavior for a lot of Chinese people talking with foreigners. They tend to say, yeah, nodding, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It may mean I heard you. It doesn't mean, yes, I agree. So this small, gesture always create confusion or misunderstanding. And foreign leaders always said, they said yes, but actually they didn't mean yes. Or, for example, if they ask whether they understand what he was talking about, they say, yeah. They just, sometimes they just kind of like a habit.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't mean I understand you. But then for foreigners, especially for the low context, when we talk about communication, people with the low context communication, they tend to take the face value. You say yes is yes, no is no. So you have to pick the clue, or you understand it may just a habit to say yeah. And then you have to have some follow-up question to make sure you are really on the same page.
Mm-hmm. One of the tensions that I see in global teams when I work with teams where there are people who have different work style when it comes to this egalitarian or hierarchical approach is this concept of taking initiative. When I coach leaders from more egalitarian cultures, they often complain, or it comes up that when they talk actually about Polish teams, that my team members do not take initiative. Do you hear a similar tension when you work with your clients?
I smiled while you talked about that, because that's the other side of the misunderstanding or pitfalls when working with the Chinese team. That was one of the multinational company I worked in China, and the global leader visited China. Well, they hold the senior level leaders in China in the meeting and then talk about the development of Chinese business. And then, as I mentioned just now, that if it is their own responsibility, they take it. I mean, the Chinese people, they take it. They, handle any barriers to make it achieved for their leaders' direction. No doubt. But for something beyond their scope, they would expect the senior leader will stand up, make a decision, balance the power among different teams. Then there's misunderstanding here. And then at that time, the China team has a big challenge to change some of the features of the technology that impact the Chinese business. They tried, but it didn't work because it's a global thing. And then when the global leader visited, Chinese people feel, it's the opportunity for us to bring up this to our senior leader from global so that they can take charge. Now is Chinese team feel it was beyond our responsibility. It is a responsibility for the senior leader. And then in the meeting, people stood up and just bring up the problems openly. So actually, this is really out of the comfort zone for Chinese people.
Mm-hmm.
They spoke up. They deserve kind of appreciation. Oh, you brought it up. But the global leader, he perceived this action as you are complaining. You are blaming. You are waiting for me to do your job. Where is your ownership? What is your initiative? So the whole situation became a little bit very tricky because the global leader was really upset and he kind of like exploded on site and saying that, where is your ownership? Well, for Chinese people, they felt they were done wrong because they spoke up with the ownership that we want to drive Chinese business for the company. And now we need a leader to stand up for us to solve the problem. So you see the difference here.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So huge disconnect. So the global leader, for them, the idea of ownership would be what, for the Chinese team to kind of fix it or do something about it. And Chinese team, the idea of taking ownership, okay, like we tried to do it and now we're telling you that this is not going to work and you in the position of power should now fix it because it's outside of our scope.
Yeah, they expect the people in the position with the power to solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
While the global leader expected you take the ownership to fix it.
Mm-hmm. I can see also kind of a lot of misunderstandings when leaders approach managing teams in a way of, okay, I will give you freedom, I will empower you so you can make your decisions. And then from the perspective of the team that actually has an expectations of leaders to make the decisions, they just feel like, okay, like you want me to do your job, basically. So the misunderstandings happen on both sides, right?
Yeah, I would say with the Chinese culture, ownership mainly refers to I deliver what I was told. I deliver what the goal I was set by my leader. I support fully my leader without any debates, without any discount. I devoted myself fully for the goal I committed. That is the ownership. While in Western country, especially in the US, the inspirational leader, they set the goal, they set the purpose, the big picture. They expect you navigate as the owner along the way. It's not just me telling you what you try to achieve. Once I set why we are doing that, what we try to achieve, then for the initiatives, you initiate, you take the own, fully charge what you are going to do. So I would say that with the high status, high hierarchy, people expect a more clear set about responsibilities, about scope. Well, in terms of ownership, well, for more like a Western style, like US or Netherlands, it's more about you take the ownership to navigate with the ambiguities.
Very important distinction. And I loved your examples that you have shared so far. Can you think about another example, maybe when you helped a leader or a team to approach something in a more culturally appropriate way, more effective way?
One example was a Chinese leader working in the Netherlands. That leader is a very typical Chinese leader, like a parent. He took charge of everything. He even organized social activities over the weekend, devoted his own time to make sure people have a fun time together. And he also checked in very often to make sure there's no mistake and no failure for their team. So that is the style of this Chinese leader in the Netherlands. Well, for the team has Dutch people, has people from other countries in Europe. And then they had very negative feedback on this leader. They claim this leader is a micromanager. The leader doesn't trust them. The leader doesn't delegate. The leader check in all the time. So you see, it's a big issue, big challenge for this leader. And then I coach this leader. So what I helped the leader first to understand the different culture dimension, as we mentioned about the hierarchy, about egalitarian, about the relationship oriented, about the task oriented, about the communication. So help the leader realize the difference and different expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And then secondly, with this way, it help this leader build self-awareness. So understand his style, what are the impact or what can be perceived differently by people from different culture. So that is the first one, is more about building the awareness. And secondly, it's very important that this leader believes that he should have all the answers. He should hold responsibilities of every single team member. So that is important mentality shift. As a leader, you don't have to be the expert. Especially in Netherlands, you need to facilitate. You need to empower people. So then help this leader build a new behavior instead of just a one-way talking. Most of the time in their meeting is one-way talking. So instead of one-way talking, ask questions. Each meeting you prepare questions, making your team to speak up, to contribute. And then third, most importantly, is that he can seek feedback. Because you do things with a good intention, it doesn't mean people understood the same way. Then seek feedback. After meeting, for example, what's your reaction? What's your thought? What do you think went well? What didn't went well? So then help people to give the feedback. Then it further build the awareness, but also build the trust with the team.
I love this distinction that you mentioned. I think it's really, really central when you think about this cultural difference around egalitarian and hierarchy. Is what is a leader? Am I an expert? Do I have to have answers to most of the questions my team will have? Or my role is more of a facilitator. I create this environment, I ask questions so people can do their best work. Very different behaviors for both.
Yeah, and one more thing is this Chinese leader, he tend to check in randomly. Whenever he thought about something, he may call or text team member. Well, in Western country, in Netherlands or US, it's very important that you respect your team members' time. They have their own pace of working. Then one thing he built was to have a regular one-on-one to review the work rather than just a randomly check-in. So then in the regular, for example, weekly or bi-weekly meeting, he could learn the update of the projects from the team member. He could ask questions to understand more about their approach rather than just check in from time to time. Yeah.
I can see how that could really, really help. And introducing this structure also gives the leader what he needs in this situation. So just to understand what is happening in the team.
Yeah.
We are using the example of China, but I think this will in general resonate with a lot of cultures, not only national cultures, but also organizational cultures. So my question would be, what are a few tips for leading across cultures, in particular when collaborating with colleagues from China?
For this question, I generated kind of like a few lists for foreign leaders they could follow. One is that consider the China is a group-oriented culture. So and personal identity ties more to a group and the relationships than individuality. So then focusing on teamwork. This is very important to prioritize the group benefits versus a person who consider the goal of the group before acting is worthy of respect. So this is more important that you set the group first and then individual. That will earn the trust and respect of people. So that is one. The other one, we always talk about status and egalitarian. So in China, people respect the fixed hierarchical relationship. So as a leader, then you know that people tend not to be open, expressing different opinions. Then you have to encourage them to express different opinions. And one example was my leader when I was in China. She was from US, and she knew I had a lot of good ideas, but I do not speak until I feel I'm fully sure about my solution. But then she gave me a feedback. She said, Benita, you don't have to wait until you have a complete solution. Even you just have an idea, put it up on the table, and it is a good opportunity for a team to discuss based on that and build upon it, rather than just listen to a full solution. If you don't speak up, then it's wasted. So that is something I benefit a lot. So I perceive speaking up early on in a totally different perspective, that I bring value.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm struck with, she kind of used two things that you mentioned before. One is she set expectations, right, for you as a team member. And then she highlighted the group benefit. So if you share your idea, the team can learn. So she was very effective in that.
Exactly, because I perceive speaking up in a different way, that I still bring value, even though it's not a mature idea, even though it's not a complete solution. And for leaders who lead a group of cross-culture background people, it's very important that they give the chance to people from culture with a status like Chinese, Japanese, Korean. Those cultures all high status. They would show respect without interrupting people. And then you will see that the Asian people in the meeting are always the silent people, because they are waiting for the chance to speak up, but nobody gives them the chance. So as a leader, you have to, keep in mind, if there is Asian employees in my team, I need to create the space for them to speak up. So that is another thing to keep in mind. And then as a leader, you always need to influence others, right? You have your peers, you have your key stakeholders. So if working in China, remember that the most effective to influence is that you identify the key people who have the power to make decision within a particular group. So, it's different from egalitarian. In Netherlands, you have to, engage every single person. Otherwise, it's hard to move forward. But in China, if you can pick the key people, you solve 80% of the problem. Yeah, we call it as a 擒贼先擒王. That means if you want to conquer your enemies, you conquer the king of the enemy first.
How you identify kind of the key people then? What helps?
The key people is more the people in power, in the position power. Yeah. So another dimension we talk about is indirect and direct communication. So China is a high context. That means the more indirect communication style. So as a leader in China, you have to pick the nonverbal cues. And also remember, saving face is very, very important. Don't kind of like contradict or argue or confront with people in public. That's very important. You can talk after the meeting, before the meeting privately, rather than, confront in public. As I mentioned earlier, yeah doesn't always mean yes. So you have to ask follow-up questions to make sure you're on the same page. And last but not least, 关系 is very important. 关系 is the network, is the relationship. It's super important in China. So if you want to make things happen, you need to know the key people. You also need to have good relationship. So spend some time outside of the work to build a personal relationship, showing your sincere interest in others. It will help you speed up all your process.
Great examples. I'm just thinking that some of the concepts that you mentioned, for the listeners, if you haven't listened to an episode, the first one around building trust, that will be really helpful, I think. Or the second one on communication, when we discussed this high context, low context communication, I really, really recommend that. And around speaking up, episode 4 around psychological safety. So we will have some ideas also and strategies to use. Benita, I'm thinking about specific situation that a friend of mine had. She had an internship in Beijing. It was a long time ago. And she had this situation. Can I tell you about it and get your read on it?
Yeah,
awesome.
of course.
So she was working in the team, and the team was writing emails at the time, just kind of like a cold outreach to different European companies. And when she joined and when she read this email, she thought that it's not going to be very effective for the European companies. Like, it just didn't feel right to her. So she told her colleagues, and like she rewrote the email, and she told her colleagues, okay, use this. This is going to be more effective. And then that didn't work. I think her boss at the time had a conversation with her, and he said that no, they should just use the first one. What did she do wrong, or what could have she done to be more effective in this particular situation?
Your friend was new to China, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when she said that, okay, what you said was not effective in the other culture, nothing wrong with her. Well, she has to be mindful of the receiver. What's their position? As I mentioned, that saving face is very important. I'm not sure whether her email was copying to the leader as well, right? Or just to the person privately.
I think she talked to the team at this particular situation, but she hasn't approached the leader first, for sure.
Then the leader was the one who sent the email or original email or the team member?
So the team members were sending the emails to the companies, and she thought that this email is not effective. She told the colleagues, and then the leader, who was not involved in those conversations at all, said that, okay, you should not use it. Go back to the first one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the leader is a Chinese as well,
yes,
right?
And she was the only foreigner in the team.
Yeah. You know, the first thing I reflected here is that the blind spots, because both the leader and the Chinese employees, they are Chinese. They know what works with the Chinese context, but they don't know what doesn't work in the other culture. So there's blind spot. Pointing out blind spot of others, it takes some skills.
Mm-hmm.
If you just say directly, because they don't know, it's hard for them to accept or believe. That is one thing. I think that is universal, not only for Chinese or other culture. Anybody has a blind spot. They cannot just take what different opinion immediately. So that is one thing. Secondly, people involved in this situation, they interpreted your friend's behavior may not be exactly the same intention. Your friend's intention is to help them to do the work most effectively. Mm-hmm. Well, they may feel that, oh, you don't respect us, our work. You are a newcomer. What do you know? But why you kind of like intervene like this? They feel no respect and no understanding here. So that is the second thing. That's my interpretation. You know, as I mentioned, that Chinese culture is relationship-based. It's the trust comes from understanding you. Since she is a newcomer, your voice can be most light, I would say, at the beginning. Mm-hmm. Yeah, once you build your trust, once you build your credibility, then what you said may be easily accepted by the people. So building trust, building relationship first, showing your credibility first, and then you can influence more.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Very good points. I'm going to ask you, I think, one of my last questions. We've covered so many things, so thank you so much for that. But what are the most important things you want the listeners to know about global leadership?
I would say, you know, there are a lot of skills involved, but eventually it is about how to be a best of yourself in the world. The best of yourself in the world means one, everybody has your potential. we have our tendency or our habits or our normal behavior based on our experience, our, the framework we had before. But we always have the capability to expand ourselves, to grow ourselves. So we can always become a better ourselves. It's a growing journey. In the world is that we put ourselves in different cultures. We put ourselves in different challenges scenarios. Then through that, we see the room for us to grow. We see the room for us to behave even more effectively. So it's a journey. It's a journey to become better self, to be I would say depending on what leadership you define. If you define yourself as an influencer, if you define yourself as a catalyst, if you define yourself as an inspirational leader, so then achieve what you define through growing yourself, through growing others, and adapt it to the different scenarios. That is a very rewarding journey.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And even our discussion on the definition from the beginning makes me think about how important it is for us as leaders to define our roles and just be clear around what do we want to achieve, because only then we're able to be effective in that. Benita, my last question is a standard one. What was the most valuable thing that you took from this conversation?
The valuable thing, I would say that it's kind of like it's like a movie. Like I replay the whole journey for myself from China, come out of China, in US and in Europe. I see the common challenges that as a human being we all have. We find that we achieve something, we were successful, something at a certain point, but when we change the setting, when we change the culture, or when we change the environment, suddenly something doesn't work. The success doesn't stand itself anymore. We have a new mountain to conquer. And then we build muscle. We learn the environment and we adapt ourselves, and then we conquer another mountain. So I just feel it's like the life itself or the leadership journey itself is just endless mountain you climb. But you feel you are stronger and stronger. And at the same time, when we look back, we see people at the foot of the mountain. We can help them. It's not just to give them a hand, but also show them what can be possible. So, the possibility that you can also climb and conquer the different mountains.
And that's a beautiful thought to finish on, and comes back to the beginning that leadership is really about people and making them better, helping them achieve their potential. Benita, thank you so much for the conversation. As always, I learned a lot, and thank you so much for sharing your examples. Listeners, I will add some additional materials to the podcast page, so if you want to check them out, please do that. And thank you so much for listening. Share the podcast, follow it, and I will see you next month.